Welcome to my channel, HFY Story Hub. The alien princess raised the plasma pistol to her own head the moment the human entered the throne room. Gasps exploded across the crystal hall. Royal guards drew weapons instantly. But Crown Princess Lyra Vane never took her glowing silver eyes off the human man standing beneath the towering palace gates. "If you came to pity me," she whispered coldly, "leave now before I pull the trigger." The human did not move, did not flinch, and somehow that terrified her more. Rain hammered the glass domes of Aethra Prime like falling bullets from the heavens. Lightning flashed across the endless towers of the imperial capital, illuminating the scar carved across Lyra's face. One deep wound, from forehead to jaw. Ruined. At least that was what the galaxy called her now. Once, she had been known as the Jewel of Aethra, the most beautiful royal ever born beneath the twin suns. Then came the war. Then came the fire. Then came the moment she dragged 32 children from a burning transport while enemy soldiers tore through her skin with molten steel. Now suitors arrived only to stare. Then leave. Some looked disgusted. Others looked afraid. One prince actually laughed before walking out. Lyra never forgot that laugh. Neither did the Empire. The throne chamber felt like a tomb now. Silent. Humiliated. And at the center of it stood the latest visitor. Human Commander Elias Kane. Earthborn. Military diplomat. Decorated war survivor. And according to half the galaxy, the handsomest human alive. Tall. Dark-haired. Broad shoulders wrapped in a black Terran uniform. A face sharp enough to belong in royal sculptures. The perfect man. Which meant Lyra already hated him. Because beautiful people always looked at her scars the longest. Emperor Kale finally broke the silence. "Commander Kane," he said carefully, "you understand our daughter's condition." Lyra's grip tightened around the pistol. Condition. She hated that word. Like she was diseased. Broken. Elias finally spoke. "No," he said quietly. The room froze. The Emperor frowned. Elias stepped forward slowly. "I understand what it cost her." Lyra blinked. That was new. Most humans stared at the scars first. Elias stared directly into her eyes. No disgust. No fake sympathy. Just focus. Like he saw a soldier instead of damage. The princess lowered the weapon slightly. "Careful, human," she warned softly. "You're standing very close to disappointment." A faint smile touched his mouth. "I survived Earth politics," he replied. "Disappointment doesn't scare me." A few nervous laughs escaped the court. Lyra didn't laugh. But for one dangerous second, she almost wanted to. The Emperor gestured toward the banquet chamber. "We prepared a formal." "No," Lyra interrupted sharply. Every eye turned toward her. "If the human wants honesty," she said, "then he can see the truth first." Before anyone could stop her, she turned and walked toward the side corridor. The old corridor. The forbidden one. Elias followed without hesitation. That surprised her too. Most visitors avoided the lower palace levels. Too many memories. Too much death. The lights dimmed as they descended beneath the Crystal Palace into the ancient military wing buried underneath the royal city. Cold air wrapped around them. Steel walls replaced polished marble. Old battle banners hung torn and blackened. "This," Lyra said quietly, "is where they brought the survivors." Elias remained silent. Good. Silence was better than pity. She stopped before a sealed metal door. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed the access panel. The chamber opened with a hiss. Elias stepped inside. And stopped breathing. The room was filled with melted armor. Rows of burned combat suits. Child-sized helmets. Tiny shoes fused into blackened steel. The aftermath of the refugee transport attack. Lyra's voice became distant. They said saving them was impossible. She walked deeper into the chamber. The transport was hit above the atmosphere. One step. Fire spread everywhere. Another. The soldiers abandoned the civilians. She touched one of the tiny helmets gently. But the children were still screaming. Elias looked at her scars again. Not with horror. with understanding. That somehow hurt worse. You carried them out, he said softly. Lyra laughed bitterly. No. She turned toward him, silver eyes shining with old pain. I carried out the ones who were still alive. Silence crushed the room. Even the air felt heavy. Then Elias noticed something else. At the far end of the chamber stood a shattered medical pod. Its metal walls sliced apart from the inside. Claw marks covered the interior. Huge claw marks. Human eyes narrowed. What happened there? Lyra's expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. The princess stepped between him and the broken pod. Leave it alone. Elias looked at the claw marks again. Too large for any known species. The metal itself looked melted around the edges, like something inside had burned through solid titanium. Then he saw the blood. Fresh blood. Not old. Fresh. A deep growl suddenly echoed through the darkness beneath the palace. Low. Massive. Inhuman. The entire floor trembled. Alarms exploded across the corridor. Red lights flooded the chamber. And for the first time since meeting her, Princess Lyra looked truly terrified. Because something beneath the palace had just awakened. And it was calling her name. The creature beneath the palace screamed once. And every soldier in the underground corridor dropped to their knees bleeding from the ears. The sound was not natural. It was too deep. Too ancient. The metal walls shook violently as crimson warning lights spun across the military wing. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere far below them, something enormous slammed against reinforced steel hard enough to bend it inward. Princess Lyra grabbed Elias Kane's arm instantly. We leave. Now. Her voice had changed. Gone was the cold royal control. This was fear. Real fear. But Elias looked past her toward the shattered medical pod. Fresh blood still dripped slowly across the floor. What is it? He demanded. Lyra's silver eyes darkened. A mistake. Another impact thundered below them. Closer this time. The corridor lights flickered. Then came the growl again. Low. Hungry. And impossibly intelligent. Elias felt it vibrate through his chest like a second heartbeat. Human instincts screamed danger. Every soldier around them looked ready to run. One palace guard stumbled backward while clutching his rifle. The restraints are failing. Seal the lower levels, another shouted into a comm unit. Too late. A deafening explosion erupted somewhere beneath them. The entire floor lurched sideways. Then the screaming started. Not one scream. Dozens. Lyra closed her eyes for one painful second. It escaped. Elias turned toward her sharply. What escaped? She looked at him silently. Then finally whispered the words the Empire had hidden for years. The monster that saved me. Another blast echoed through the corridor. This time accompanied by shredded metal and gunfire. Elias immediately drew the compact plasma sidearm hidden beneath his jacket. The nearby alien officers stared. Humans were physically weaker than most galactic species. They were not supposed to move toward danger. But Elias already was. Commander! Lyra snapped. You don't understand what this thing can do. He looked back at her calmly. No, he admitted. But I understand panic. Then he started walking toward the gunfire. The alien guards exchanged stunned looks. One officer actually muttered in disbelief, "Humans are insane." Lyra cursed softly under her breath and followed. The deeper corridors looked like a battlefield already. Smoke flooded the air. Emergency doors hung twisted off their frames. 3 armored guards lay unconscious beside melted rifles. And claw marks, massive claw marks, covered the walls. Elias crouched beside one destroyed blast door. Titanium alloy, nearly 30 centimeters thick, ripped open like paper. His expression hardened. What kind of animal does this? Lyra answered quietly. Not an animal. Then they heard footsteps ahead. Heavy. Slow. Something huge moved through the smoke beyond the corridor intersection. The surviving guards raised weapons instantly. Contact ahead. Motion confirmed. Fire if it moves. Elias stepped beside them. Through the smoke, he finally saw it. And for one rare moment, even the human froze. The creature stood nearly 9 feet tall. Black armor-like skin covered its massive frame. Its claws looked more like blades than hands. Long silver scars crossed its chest and neck like ancient battle wounds. One glowing golden eye locked onto the soldiers. The other eye was gone completely. Destroyed. And somehow, that made it even more terrifying. The guards opened fire. Blue plasma bolts exploded across the corridor. The creature moved instantly. Too fast. Far too fast. It slammed into the walls and ceiling with horrifying speed, dodging blasts before tearing one rifle apart with a single swipe. Soldiers scattered. One screamed as claws stopped inches from his throat. The monster froze, breathing heavily. Its glowing eye shifted past the guards, toward Lyra. Silence filled the corridor. Then the impossible happened. The creature slowly lowered itself to one knee before the scarred princess. Like a warrior bowing before royalty. Elias stared in disbelief. The guards looked even more horrified. Lyra stepped forward carefully. Her hands trembled slightly. "It's all right," she whispered. The monster's growl softened instantly. Not rage now. Pain. Elias noticed the blood running down its side. Fresh wounds. Burn marks. Chains still hanging from one wrist. Someone had tortured this thing recently. The human's jaw tightened. Who kept it imprisoned? Lyra didn't answer immediately, because footsteps suddenly echoed behind them. Heavy boots. Armed soldiers flooded the corridor wearing black imperial armor. At their center stood High Chancellor Veros. Cold-faced, perfectly dressed, and smiling. "Your Highness," he said smoothly, "step away from the abomination." The creature growled again instantly. Veros ignored it completely. Elias did not miss the fear hidden behind the Chancellor's smile. "Interesting. You imprisoned it," Elias realized. Veros glanced at him dismissively. "Human politics are irrelevant here." "That's not a denial." Lyra stepped protectively beside the creature. "It saved my life," she said sharply. The Chancellor's expression darkened. "And doomed the Empire in doing so." Silence. Elias looked between them. "What the hell is going on?" Veros finally answered. 20 years ago, our scientists discovered an ancient life form buried beneath the polar ruins of Ithra Prime. He gestured toward the kneeling creature. A biological weapon from a forgotten war. The creature's golden eye narrowed. "They experimented on it," Lyra whispered. Elias felt anger rise instantly. "Of course they did." The Chancellor continued coldly. "The beast was uncontrollable until the transport attack years later. Somehow it bonded itself to the princess during the incident." The creature looked at Lyra again. Protective. Loyal. Almost gentle. Veros raised his hand sharply. "And that bond threatens the stability of the Empire." Dozens of soldiers aimed weapons at the creature. Lyra stepped forward instantly. "No. Move aside, princess." The monster rose to full height beside her. Towering. Deadly. But it did not attack. Not yet. Then Elias noticed something horrifying. The soldiers weren't aiming only at the creature anymore. Half their rifles were pointed directly at Lyra. The human's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You're threatening your own princess." Veros smiled faintly. For the survival of the Empire, sacrifices must be made. Every instinct inside Elias Kane snapped cold. He moved without warning. Faster than anyone expected. His plasma pistol slammed against the Chancellor's throat before the guards could react. The first soldier who moved lost his arm. No one even saw the monster strike. 1 second the guard aimed at Elias Kane. The next. Blood exploded across the corridor walls. Screams erupted instantly. The massive creature stood protectively between Lyra and the firing line, claws dripping crimson under the flashing emergency lights. High Chancellor Veros stumbled backward in horror. Fire! Plasma bolts filled the corridor. The monster roared. Not like an animal. Like war itself. It smashed forward through the gunfire, tearing armored soldiers apart with terrifying force. Steel bent. Bodies flew. The underground halls shook beneath its rage. But Elias never looked away from Veros. His pistol remained pressed against the Chancellor's throat. "You set this up," the human growled. Veros smiled despite the chaos around them. "You still don't understand." Then he activated something hidden beneath his sleeve. A sharp electronic pulse echoed through the corridor. The monster froze instantly. Its roar became a scream. Lyra's face drained of color. "No!" The creature collapsed to one knee, clutching its head as invisible waves ripped through its body. Blood poured from its ruined eye socket. Elias realized immediately. Control frequencies. Pain conditioning. The Empire had tortured the creature into obedience. Veros ripped himself free from Elias and staggered behind the remaining guards. "You think it bonded with the princess naturally?" the Chancellor shouted over the chaos. "We engineered the bond." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "What?" Veros laughed coldly. The creature was uncontrollable until it encountered royal blood during the refugee attack. The bond stabilized its aggression. His eyes darkened. "You were never the survivor, princess. You were the containment system." The words hit harder than plasma fire. Lyra looked toward the kneeling creature. Toward the being that had saved her life. Protected her for years. Suffered in chains because of her. Pain filled her silver eyes. "You lied to me." The monster looked back at her weakly. And despite everything, it still tried to shield her body with its own. Elias felt fury rising inside him like fire. Not loud fury. Cold fury. The dangerous kind. "You tortured it," he said quietly. Veros sneered. "It is not alive in any meaningful sense. It is a weapon." Elias glanced at the terrified soldiers around them. Then at the broken creature barely able to stand. Then at Lyra. And something changed inside the human commander. Because he had seen this before. Governments calling living things weapons. Monsters created by fear. People used until they broke. Earth had done the same once. And millions had died for it. The corridor trembled violently. More explosions echoed from above. A comm officer screamed through static from somewhere deeper in the palace. "Unknown ships entering orbit." Everyone froze. Another voice shouted through the emergency channel. "It's the Varkesh Dominion." Fear spread instantly across the Imperial soldiers. Even Veros looked shaken. Lyra turned sharply. "Impossible. Their fleet is weeks away." A damaged officer stumbled around the corner covered in blood. They came through a jump breach, hundreds of ships. Elias felt his stomach tighten. The Varkesh Dominion. One of the most brutal empires in known space. And they hated weakness. The officer's voice broke completely. They're broadcasting one demand. Silence swallowed the corridor. Then the transmission echoed through every speaker in the palace. Deep. Mechanical. Terrifying. Deliver the scarred princess, or watch your world burn. Lyra closed her eyes slowly. Veros whispered a curse. But Elias noticed something worse. The monster beside Lyra suddenly became still. Too still. Its golden eye widened slightly at the voice transmission. Recognition. Fear. The creature knew them. Then the palace shook with catastrophic force. Dust exploded from the ceiling. Emergency lights died completely. Darkness swallowed everything. Screaming erupted instantly. Gunfire flashed wildly through black corridors. Someone crashed into Elias from behind. The human reacted instantly, slamming the attacker into the wall before realizing it was Lyra. "We need to move," she shouted. Another explosion thundered above them. The palace was under attack already. Elias grabbed her wrist. "Where's the creature?" A low growl answered from the darkness nearby. "Still alive." "Good." Then the entire underground wing suddenly lost gravity. Bodies lifted violently into the air. Soldiers screamed. Weapons floated helplessly. Emergency magnetic systems failing. The Varkesh were using orbital gravity disruptors. which meant invasion forces would arrive within minutes. Red emergency lights finally flickered back online and revealed absolute horror. The corridor behind them was gone, collapsed completely. Dozens buried alive. Veros crawled from the rubble, bleeding heavily from his forehead. "Get the princess to orbit," he gasped. Lyra stared at him coldly. "You made me a prisoner in my own life. And I may have doomed the world because of it," he admitted weakly. The monster suddenly stepped forward, its golden eye fixed on the ceiling above them, listening. Then Elias heard it too. Heavy impacts. Multiple. Something massive landing on the palace roof. The invasion had begun. A terrified guard checked his scanner and nearly dropped it. Life forms detected. "How many?" The soldier's voice shook. "Thousands." Silence. Then a new sound echoed through the shattered corridors. Footsteps. Slow. Confident. Not human. Not Ethran. A giant armored figure emerged through the smoke ahead. Over 8 feet tall. Black armor covered in glowing red symbols. A Varkesh war commander. Behind him came dozens more soldiers carrying shock rifles and energy blades. The commander removed his helmet slowly. Scarred gray skin. Mechanical implants. Eyes like dead stars. Then he smiled directly at Lyra. "We finally found you." Elias stepped in front of her instantly. The Varkesh commander looked amused. "A human?" he asked softly. "Interesting." His gaze shifted toward the monster beside Lyra. And suddenly the amusement vanished. Fear replaced it. Real fear. The invading soldiers actually stepped backward. The commander whispered something in his own language. One word. "Destroyer." The monster growled low. Ancient hatred filled the corridor instantly. The Varkesh commander looked back at Lyra. "You truly don't know what you bonded with, do you?" Elias tightened his grip on his weapon. "What is it?" The commander's dead eyes locked onto the human. The Varkesh commander looked at the human with genuine fear. "That creature," he repeated slowly, "was created by your species." Silence crushed the ruined corridor. Elias stared at him. "What are you talking about?" The commander's mechanical eyes shifted toward the towering beast beside Lyra. "Before humanity joined the galactic community, before Earth even discovered faster-than-light travel, your species fought a war against extinction." The monster growled softly. "Not angry. Sad." "You called them guardians," the Varkesh continued. "Living weapons engineered from human DNA and alien predators during the First Void War." Lyra's breath caught. Elias felt cold spread through his chest. "Impossible." The commander pointed toward the scarred creature. "This one was the last." The corridor trembled from distant orbital bombardments above them. Dust rained from the ceiling. But nobody moved. Because the monster itself had gone completely still. Listening. Remembering. "Our ancestors feared humans long before they feared your fleets," the Varkesh commander whispered. "Because humans created monsters willing to die for people they loved." The creature slowly turned its golden eye toward Elias. And for the first time, the human noticed it. The shape of the eyes. The jawline beneath the scars. Even the way it stood protectively before Lyra. It looked disturbingly human. Veros coughed blood from the rubble. "We found it frozen beneath the northern ruins decades ago. Ancient records called it Subject Zero." "No," the Varkesh commander corrected quietly. His voice almost sounded respectful. "His name was Orion." The monster closed its eye. Like hearing the name hurt. Then memories suddenly slammed into Elias's mind. Not his memories. The creatures. Fire. Darkness. Human scientists crying as they sealed thousands of people into underground shelters. Children screaming. Alien ships burning Earth's skies. And one enormous soldier standing alone against impossible armies while terrified civilians escaped behind him. Orion. The last guardian. The final weapon humanity created when extinction stood at Earth's door. Elias staggered backward, breathing hard. "What did you people do to him?" The Varkesh commander's face hardened. "We didn't defeat the Guardians. We survived them." The monster suddenly roared. Every light in the corridor exploded. Shockwaves blasted soldiers off their feet. The air itself vibrated with fury. Then Orion looked directly at Lyra, and gently touched his claws against the scar crossing her face. Careful. Protective. Like he remembered another life. Another human child long ago. Lyra's silver eyes filled with tears. You saved me. Orion lowered his head slightly. Yes. The palace shook violently again. A massive explosion tore through the upper levels. The Varkesh commander immediately snapped back into focus. Enough history. Bring us the Guardian and the Princess. Thousands of invasion troops flooded the corridors behind him. Shock rifles charged. Energy blades ignited. Elias looked around once. No escape. No reinforcements. Just impossible odds. The human slowly stepped beside Orion. Then beside Lyra. Equal. Together. The Varkesh commander almost laughed. You intend to fight? Elias cracked his neck slowly. And smiled. It was not a normal smile. It was the expression soldiers wear moments before doing something suicidal. Buddy, he said quietly, humans fight things stronger than us every day. Then he looked at Orion. Ready. The Guardian stared at him silently. Then gave one small nod. Everything exploded. Orion launched forward first. A living missile of claws and rage. Varkesh soldiers vanished beneath crushing force as the Guardian ripped through entire lines like paper. Elias moved with him. Human reflexes. Human brutality. Pure survival instinct. He grabbed a fallen shock rifle mid-slide and fired point-blank into an armored soldier before smashing another across the face hard enough to crack bone. Lyra joined them seconds later. Her silver energy blade ignited with a scream of light. The scarred princess became death itself. Together they carved through impossible numbers. Back to back. Human. Alien. Monster. Not one of them retreating. The Varkesh commander watched in disbelief. Because the rumors were true. Humans were terrifying when protecting someone they loved. More enemy troops poured into the corridor. Dozens. Hundreds. Orion roared as plasma fire tore through his body. Still he fought. Still he shielded Lyra whenever shots came near her. Elias saw the Guardian weakening. Too many wounds. Too much blood. Then the ceiling above them cracked open completely. Cold starlight flooded the corridor. The enemy flagship hovered directly overhead. Weapons charging. The commander smiled coldly. This world dies now. Lyra looked upward in horror. Orbital cannons glowed bright red. Enough firepower to erase the palace. Maybe the entire city. Then Elias made his decision. He grabbed the detonator from a dead Varkesh officer. Orion immediately understood. The Guardian's eye widened. No, Lyra whispered. Elias looked at her one last time. Really looked at her. Not the scars. Not the princess. Her. You asked me once if humans feared disappointment, he said softly. A sad smile touched his face. We fear failing the people we care about more. Then he slammed the detonator into Orion's chest armor. The ancient Guardian finally spoke. One broken sentence. In an old human language forgotten by time. Protect them. And then Orion flew upward. Straight through the collapsing ceiling. Straight toward the enemy flagship. The Varkesh commander screamed in terror. Because he finally understood what humanity truly was. Not stronger. Not faster. Not immortal. Just willing to sacrifice everything for each other. The explosion consumed the sky. White light swallowed the stars. The enemy flagship vanished instantly. Then the entire Varkesh fleet began retreating in panic. The war was over. Silence fell across Aethra Prime. Days later, millions gathered before the rebuilt palace. Not for mourning. For remembrance. Statues of the fallen already lined the memorial gardens. But the largest stood at the center. A scarred guardian protecting a child with one massive hand. Beside it stood Crown Princess Lyra. And beside her stood Elias Kane. Not diplomat. Not hero. Family. Lyra reached for his hand openly before the entire galaxy. This time, nobody looked at her scars with disgust. They looked with respect. Because they finally understood what humans saw immediately.